This is Close Encounters. Close Encounters. True stories, real people. Close Encounters on Cross Rhythms.
Hello, it's Anne Donaldson here, and you're listening to Close Encounters on Cross Rhythms. My guest today is Jim Ford. Welcome, Jim, to Close Encounters.
Hi, Anne. It's good to be with you.
So lovely to have you today. Now then, Jim is a former gang leader, thug and criminal, but I have to say former, and I know that you weren't born in that state. There's a way you become with an identity like that, and so perhaps you're going to talk us through your early years.
Well, yeah, it's strange because I've lived here so long in Stoke-on-Trent that people think I'm a Potteries lad, but I was actually born in a hospital. I don't remember much about it, but I was born in a hospital in Christchurch, just outside of Bournemouth, and lived the first 9 years of my life living in the New Forest, just outside of Ringwood, going towards Brockenhurst in the New Forest.
Beautiful.
And darling buds of May country, you know, an idyllic life in the middle of the country, great place to come. And then I came to Stoke-on-Trent, which was, I'll have to say, back in the day, a culture shock, because I left this idyllic world in the New Forest and came to live in a not so sunny Stoke-on-Trent, shall we say.
Yeah.
Heavy industry, pottery industry, deep mining, steelworks, the whole thing. And it was a traumatic, I have to say, a traumatic culture change for me.
Yeah.
And that was I was 9 years old.
Yeah. So that would have a massive impact on you.
Oh, yes, it did. It did. I didn't know. I'd come to Stoke-on-Trent before on a couple of holidays, but, coming in for a week and then going back to, that was fine. But coming here and going to school here was absolutely, I was devastated. And I not least of all because there was a language barrier, funnily enough. Back in the day, we all spoke differently.
Yeah.
I think English now, the culture, the dialects have changed, but they couldn't understand me, and I couldn't understand them, which led to problems anyway. And I was just, in another world. It might have been another world to me, and that's how it felt. And so, I had to almost fight myself to get into this new life that had been thrust on me, not by my choice, may I add.
And were you an only child?
Yes, I was an only child, so I was on my own.
Yeah, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, if you've got siblings, there is at least somebody that you can relate to and talk to. But that was how it panned out for the first few months, if not longer. And so I ended up becoming isolated. I became inward and I became cold. And, it was a fight for survival, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know what to do.
Okay.
And
did you make new friends?
Yes, I've always been a sort of an outgoing person in that sense. So I started to make friends. One person in particular, but and then I don't know how to put it. It was, I got into the wrong sort of friendships.
Okay.
And was influenced by that. So that started I suppose the onset of a downward path, really, in that sense.
So what would be rough and tumble at 9 or 10 years old?
Yeah.
grew more serious.
Oh, became more serious, yeah. And I suppose it all started when, I had to learn very quickly that I was not in the New Forest anymore. I was in an inner city where the tough are tough, and you almost, back in those days, had to fight for survival. You had to be noticed, and so I learned very quickly about the rule of fighting. Well, there was no rules, and I learned that very quickly, because I thought, oh well, yeah. I never got into a fight when I was down south, as it were, but coming up here, I soon found out that you had to fight, literally, for survival, for recognition, we'll call it upstanding, but the wrong upstanding,
Yes,
if you understand what I'm saying.
I suppose you were building a reputation, were you?
Yeah, and that reputation is a very difficult one to define, because once you've got a reputation, you have to fight to keep the reputation.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to take your reputation. And it all started with a family that I got involved with, the wrong type of family, and it all started in one of the back entries, the alleyways, the back of houses, and this young man challenged me, and he pulled a knife on me, so knife crime is not a new thing.
No.
And I'm talking a few years ago now, and he pulled a knife on me, and I thought, whoa. But this guy got a reputation, or the family had got a reputation as well, and so I just dealt with this guy very swiftly. I was not. I'd learned that there are no rules in fighting, and so I took the knife off him, or got the knife off him, and just I.
You won.
I won. Yes, that's a nice way of putting it. That's really and I just threw the knife down the grid. But after that fame spread, because this Jim Ford has just done this so-called named person who got a reputation, and I just beaten the living daylights out of him. And so that was my reputation born, if you like. And it escalated from there. It just escalated, and you sort of have no control over this, and it just goes from bad to worse in some respects. Then I committed my first crime when I was 10, and it was breaking and entering, and a warehouse, in fact, and so it wasn't just a minor crime; it was robbery, and I ended up in court as a young person, 10 years old, and the life of crime started, almost as a result of, because it was with the same family. And it just escalated from there. Fighting and crime.
And what were your parents' thoughts, or what?
This is it's hard to say really, because I in all my life, my whole of my life, I'm talking about now, from a young age, never had a relationship with my father. I cannot think once in my life that he ever put his arms around me, hugged me, or affirmed me, or said he loved me, or anything like that. And I think that was a result of, he came out of the war. He was in what was then known as Burma, and it was with the Japanese, and I thought that had a lasting effect on him. That lasted all his life. And all he lived for was to go to work, so I never developed a relationship with him. And so it was difficult really, because I became a law unto myself, with no father influence, no love. My mother was totally different, and so we had a good relationship, but my father, I had no parental influence, and my mother just couldn't control me anyway, so that was that was how I developed the next few years of my life.
Well, I think it would be a good time to take a pause and listen to your first choice of music. And you've chosen a real golden oldie hymn.
Yes.
The words are very powerful.
It was one of the first, I call it a hymn because that's what they were back in the day. And the words meant a lot to me then, and they still do, actually. They still do.
You're listening to Close Encounters. I'm Anne Donaldson, and my guest today is Jim Ford. Now, Jim, before that hymn, we were hearing about the influence that your friendship that you had with that particular family had. What impact did that have as you went on into your teenage years?
Well, it actually was the first step into a life of crime, of violence, fighting. When I went to secondary modern school, as it was back then, and my one claim to fame, I went to school at Wellington Road where Stanley Matthews went to school. But anyway, that's beside the point. And but my life was just a downward spiral. At age of 15, and I was just about to leave school, because that's what you did then. You went straight out of school into work. I was actually working in the red light area at 15. I was a barman in one of the toughest pubs in Stoke-on-Trent, and I was the bouncer as well. They called them bouncers in those days, not doormen, and we had license to do whatever we wanted to do, and that suited me down to the ground because my life was fighting. But I was 15 and I was working in the red light area. I knew the prostitutes by name, not because I used them, but they were just friends, and that's where I went, and it got worse. In fact, I was terrible. But there was a brief interlude, shall we say. When I was 16, I went to a church that will remain nameless, but I went to this church, and it wasn't a normal service. It was the offer of free coffee and tea and biscuits was the draw, not the church. And there I heard some young people talking about their relationship with Jesus, and I sort of, well, this Jesus fella sounds all right. He's he's not bad, really. And so I started to go, and I think it was a genuine thing, but it only lasted a few months because certain things happened, and I thought, well, if that's Christianity, you can I use the phrase, shove it, and I didn't, and I went back worse than I came in, if that's the expression. And my life really took a downward spiral. I've been arrested for doing a robbery. I was the getaway driver in a robbery, and we eventually got caught and taken to court. And it was I took the rap for the car stealing, taking and driving away. I did my one claim to fame, if you like. I was banned from driving before I'd even got a license. This was before I got a driving license. And so, this is my life, or was my life. And when we went to court, and the judge, there were four of us, and the first two got sentenced 2 years each in prison. And he came to me, and my solicitor told me to look reasonably smart when I went to stood in the dock, and which I did. But I took what we called a haversack then, because I was due to go to work, because he said, get a job as well, because that looks good. And so I was working at Shelton Bar, which was the steelworks here in Stoke-on-Trent at the time. And the judge came to me, and he said, where do you think you're going, young man? I said, well, I'm going to work after I've been here. He said, don't you know I have the authority to send you to prison? And he just sentenced two of the guys. This was me. I don't believe I ever said it now. Thinking back, I think, why did you say that, Jim? I said, well, you can please yourself. And he said, right, I'm going to give you 3 years probation. And I could have, you could have shot me. Well, it was a shot. But that was my life. And then there was the fighting. I was a rocker. I like the Rolling Stones. I'm not a Beatles fan. They're too clean cut. And so I was a Rolling Stones fan. But we had a rockers club where the old Hanley station used to be, and it was called the Zambezi Club. And 3 young Asians came in. Well, we're going back a long time now where, Asians didn't go where white rockers were. And I was in there, and they asked me to deal with them and eject them, shall we say.
Yes.
And there was 3 of them, so everybody thought it was a fair deal. Anyway, I put these guys out, and what ensued after was a fight that left one of the guys very, very badly injured. One of them went and got a tire lever bar out of the back of the car, what you tighten the wheel nuts on a car up on, and came at me with this bar, and I just dealt with them. One of them, I have you ever trapped your finger in the door when you know? Well, I put this man's arm in the door and shut the door, and he was left hanging from the door with his arm, half his arm inside, and cutting a long story short, that when the police came to arrest me for ABH, which is actual bodily harm, there's grievous bodily harm and actually bodily harm, and it was ABH, and they said they'd taken this young man to hospital with fractured skull, broken arm, bruises. He was bleeding from his ears, all kinds of things, and his leg. I just did a job on him, as they used to say back in the day, and there was 3 of them, so it was a fair fight, and they couldn't charge me because I got so many witnesses to say that these 3 had attacked me, and so. But that was where I was. I was so cold-hearted, so I didn't want to know, and it was as natural as breathing. Having a fight was as natural as breathing, and that was my life: crime, violence, and. But, this club didn't open till 10 o'clock at night. So you could imagine, we were talking early hours of the morning here. And that was my life. And my parents, going back to what you said earlier, I'd get in at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that was early. And that was my life. And I'm still not even 20.
Yeah.
I'm still in my teenage years. Yeah. And so... that was my whole life, given over to violence and crime.
And did you have any emotions or any feelings, or was there something you were searching for, or were you like beyond that?
I was beyond that. Yeah. I had no emotion. I have thought about it since, but the recognition that I had.
Was what was important.
Was important. But looking back, all I wanted to do, all I wanted to be, was be loved. And that's the confessions of a gang leader here. And I've spoken to others since, and they've said the same thing, that they just wanted to be loved, or and it's a strange thing. You use the reputation that you've got. I had hundreds of acquaintances, but I could have counted on one hand friends.
Yeah, and no one who loved you.
No.
That you were aware of.
No, not that I was aware of. Yeah, and this is it. And when I became the gang leader of what the gang was called, the Smallthorne Clampets, which was associated with Port Vale, the football club, and we went all over the country causing chaos.
So that search for love leads us to the second song that you've chosen, which is just the words are about this amazing love.
Yeah.
When
Yes.
I survey the wondrous cross
On which?
the Prince of Glory died. We're going to listen to it.
Okay.
Thank you. My guest today is Jim Ford. And Jim, we were hearing about your involvement in fights and being a gang leader and some of the things that you were involved with. We also heard about this need for love. And we've just heard the amazing words of that song. That love was out there, but you didn't yet know it.
No, that's right. Yeah.
But how did you come to discover that amazing love?
If you've got 3 hours, I can tell you. No, I know you haven't got 3 hours. No, I hadn't thought about God at all, and I was not interested in God. I got a life. I used to drive. For a living, I was a long-distance lorry driver. I drove around in a Mark II Jag, and I was 22 years old and living the life. I was living the dream, as I thought. And one Sunday lunchtime, because you always used to go, one of the things you always did at that time of my life was go to the pub on a Sunday lunchtime, and we used to play cards for money and all that kind of stuff. And this one Sunday, I was in my local pub, the Prince of Wales Feathers. I can still remember the name. But I came out of that pub 3 o'clock to go home for my Sunday lunch, as it was then, what we used to do. And I started to walk up the street. It was only a block away from my home, and so I was walking up the street, and I actually heard, I don't know whether people will believe this or not, but I actually heard a voice. And this voice said, "I want you, Jim." And the really strange thing about it is I knew who it was. And I thought, that's God. Don't ask me how I know that it was God. It was just this incredible voice, audible.
Yeah.
And I wasn't drunk. I was not drunk. I mean, I've spilt a lot of beer down my tie, but I didn't wear a tie, but I've spilt a lot down it. And I started to have this conversation with this voice that I knew was God. And it was like, "I want you." And I said, "Well, you can't have me." This is how the conversation. I said, "I'm not interested." And she said, "You know where you should be." I said, "Well, I'm not going." And he said, "No, I want you." I said, "Well, you can't have me." This conversation, it seemed a long time, but it was only a few minutes. And in the end, I got fed up, to be honest. I mean, if you'd have seen me, I was having an audible conversation with an audible voice. It's a good job nobody else was in the street, or else they'd have thought I was going loopy or something. But I said, "I'll cut you a deal, God." I said, "This is what you do." And going back to when I was around about 16, when I said I had that follow Jesus thing, I said, when I went to those meetings, there was another gang leader there. I said, "I don't know whether he's dead." I'm 22 now, so we're talking 6-7 years. I said, "I don't know whether he's dead, alive, whether he goes to church, whether he's what." I said, "I don't know what happened to him." I said, "That young man comes and knocks on my door and says, 'I've heard you want to go to church.'" And I went, "There you are, God. Put that in your pipe and smoke it." I said, "That's the deal." And that was when the conversation ended. And I got home, never thought no more about it. The following week, I was back in the pub, because that's where I spent most of my life. And my mother came down to the pub and said, I'm 20. I'm in the pub drinking with my mates, and your mother comes. It's not the done deal, is it? It's not something that happens. And the barman said, "Your mum's here. She wants you." Anyway, she said, "There's a young man knocking on the door, wants you." And I said, "Who is it?" She says, "I don't know. He's about your age." I said, "You better come up and see him." Well, it was this young man.
Wow.
Wow.
I
went, a gulp.
Yeah.
As you would say, the hairs on the back of my head stood on end, and there was this. And he said, "I've heard you want to come to church."
Wow.
Exactly. You couldn't make it up.
No.
You couldn't make it up. And of all the things I was, I thought, well, I'm a man of my word. I'll do it.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah. He said, "I'll pick you up tonight." I said, "No." He said, "No, sure, I'll pick you up." So that night I went to church with this young man, and I thought, I'll sit on the back row, because that's where sinners sit, isn't it? You don't want to sit on the front row, do you? You have to sit on the back row. And so I thought, sit on the back row, and I've done my bit. I said I'd go to church. I said, God, do this. And so I went. And anyway, this young man went straight to the front of the front row. And I went, "Oh, spit." Well, it was a bit stronger than that at the time. And I'm sort of on about to sit with him. And I started to walk down the aisle, and I went into what we call super slow-mo, one of those things you see on the television. And this voice, it wasn't audible, but it sounded audible to me. I don't hear God speaking to me audibly all the time. I really don't.
No.
It's not something that happens.
No.
But I said, "Hello, Jim." And I went, "Yeah, look, I'm here. I've done my bit. You've done your bit. I've done my bit. I'm here." And he said, "No, I want you to know that I want you." And I said, "Well, I've told you can't have me." He said, No, you're not listening to me, Jim. I want you. I want your life. I don't want a decision. You made a decision back in the day to follow Jesus." He said, "But I want you." And I went, "No." I said, "No, you listen to me, Jim. I want all you have been, all you are, and all that you will ever be. I want your life. I don't want a decision. I want your life." And I went, "Oh, come on, look, no." And I'm only walking down this aisle of this church, and it's in super slow, and I'm like having this conversation, and nobody else can hear it, and I'm sort of speaking in my mind, and I said, "Well, no." He said, "No, look, let me tell you, if you walk out of this building without me, without giving me your life, you are finished." And trust me when I say this, it was a death threat. My lifestyle
would have brought it to that.
Yeah, I used to know some people that were associated with the mafia. I knew what a death threat was. I'd given them all my life, and I'd received them, and I'd fought for it. And God was saying, "I want you, but if you don't give me your life." And my response was to God, and this is true. I said, having thought about it, because I'm still walking out the aisle, and having thought about it, I said, okay, God, I'll give you my life, but I'll tell you this: if this doesn't work, I'll tell everybody that I knew, and I knew a lot of people. I'll tell everybody in the world that I know, and excuse me for saying this, people, but I'll say, you suck. You don't work. You're not who you say you are. I said, so you can have my life. And the next minute I'm sitting on the front row, and my life instantly, I found somebody wanted me for who I was, not what I could be, or what they could get out of me.
No.
Because people would come and be my friend just because they didn't want me to beat them up, and things like that. Here was somebody, the God of all creation, had come after me. He'd come after me.
Yeah.
And I went, wow.
And it wasn't based on behaviour.
No. I mean, if I'd have been God, I wouldn't have looked at me twice. And that was, it was amazing. It really was incredible. And from that moment, my life changed. And the next day when I woke up, I mean, this sounds daft, but I could hear the birds singing.
Wow. Yeah.
The trees were green.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds really silly, but that was it was an absolutely life-changing moment.
How did you extract yourself from the lifestyle that you'd got so into? Was that difficult, or was that
No, it just happened. As I said, I was a lorry driver, and on the Monday morning, I went to work, and everybody obviously knew who I was, and we went into the cafe at the quarry and I was driving a tipper at the time, a tipper lorry, and of course the conversation says, "What did you do this weekend, Jim?" And I went to church. And they said, "What pub's that?" I did, and I said, no, I went to a proper church. And they went, "Excuse me, I mean, these lads are rough." And I said, well, I gave my heart to God. And there was tea and coffee went everywhere. And it was said, and a lot of them said, in one sense, what I'm answering your question is, I nailed my colours to the mass straight away. And so, all the things that ensued followed. I'll give you a week, I'll give you 2 days. And one of them said, "Why don't you take a gun to your head and shoot yourself?" Because, And I said, "Well, we'll see." And, here I am.
Wow. Yeah.
Still here. And the journey that I went on, because when I did leave school, they said you'd never do anything, you'd never go anywhere, I'd never make anything, they didn't even give me a goodbye letter. I didn't leave with any qualifications, nothing, nothing. But that was that day
everything
was
changed.
the start of life for me.
Wow, that's amazing. That's wonderful. I think it'd be a good time to listen to your next choice of music, and it's "Same God," which is again a very relevant song for the story and for today. Welcome back to Close Encounters on Cross Rhythms with me, Anne Donaldson, and my guest today is Jim Ford. So, Jim, we heard about this being apprehended by God in a very powerful way, and for the way it immediately impacted your life and brought transformation. That's an incredible story of the transforming power of God's love, isn't it?
I just don't know what to say about it, but you have to have this encounter with this God that, and anybody that's listening, it's available to you. But my life just took off from there. No qualifications from school, nothing, zip. And I would never do anything, never go anywhere. And I was 22 and a half when this happened. And by the time I was 28, coming up 28th birthday, I was pioneering a church. Yeah. And it was talk about fast track. That doesn't happen in the world. No. Only God can take somebody that was a nobody and make them a somebody. Yeah. God was all over everything in my life. And if you remember the story of the 3 Asian lads that I talked about earlier, when I was serving the Lord in this church as one of the co-pastors, it was this. God said, "I want you to go to India And I went, oh, come on, God, you're having a laugh. You know, this is from a person that's never, you know, been out of the UK in that sense. The furthest I'd been in the UK was the Isle of Man. You know, it's just like, and so God saying, I want you to go to Asia, and I thought, that is ironic. I did not like the Asian population, let's put it like that. And now God is asking me to go to India. And cutting a very long story short, so some incredible things happened while I was in India, and I've been a couple of times, but I just thought, wow, God is so good. Here's me with this anti-Asian mindset from a former life, and now God has given me an ability or a reason to put that right. And I went, and when I came back, I was out there for just over 3 weeks, and when I came back, my whole life had again turned around, and I came back having a love for those people, and I don't cry easily. I have to say that. I didn't when I was younger, but when I got home, my wife, I just went to the sink to do something and turned the tap on, and I started to cry. I actually started to cry, and my wife went, "Why are you crying? What's the matter?" I said, "Look, there's water." And she said, "Yeah, well, you've turned the tap on." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But in India, there are no taps to turn on. And if you've got a tap with I said, it doesn't happen." And God had just shown me something that I'll never forget. Those first trips out to India, and that was just the start of a journey. And I've been halfway around the world one way and halfway around the world the other. And this is from a young man. God has taken me and elevated me to a place where I could have never dreamed of being in the natural. I ended up, don't forget, I'm a criminal, I've been a thug, I've been this, that, and the other, and I ended up, God opened up the doors in my life to actually owning my own company.
Yeah.
And guess what that was? Financial services. I became an independent financial advisor, and when I took the exams to get the qualifications, now don't forget, I flunked school, basically.
Yes, yeah.
To get this, I ended up having to go to Manchester University to take exams and we're not talking, 10-minute exams, we're talking like 4 or 5 3-hour exams. And I got top marks. And it's just like, wow. What a phrase that springs to mind was, "Would you trust this man with your money?" But but God opened up the doors. God has been not just spiritually, but practically.
Yes.
And God being involved in my life turned it turned it upside down or the right way up.
Yes.
Whichever way you look at it. And I want to say that I could keep you here all day talking about the things that I've seen God do, and that he's given me the privilege of being involved in. But it meant me laying down my life so that he could pick it up.
Yes.
Did he pick it up? Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And I just think, wow. It never ceases to amaze me, that last song, same God. Yeah. And he can do it again. Yeah. He can do it in more ways than one.
Oh, Jim,
And,
it's
yeah,
so
wow.
encouraging to hear your story. It's that deep love and acceptance that's
Yeah,
found through
yeah.
Jesus Christ. You know, before I ask you to introduce your final choice of music, I just want to say thank you, Jim, for being our guest today and for sharing your story with us. Can you share with us what the final song is that you've chosen?
Well, yeah, it's called "Speak the Name of Jesus" or "The Name of Jesus," and the first verse goes, "I just want to speak the name of Jesus over every heart and every mind, because I know there's peace within your presence. I speak Jesus." That's just the first verse, but yeah, that's an amazing song. And for anybody that's listening, I just want to say, give Jesus a chance. And I want to speak the name of Jesus over your life and pray that you might see and experience God in the same way that I have.
Thank you.
Close Encounters on Cross Rhythms. True stories, real people.